Welcome tonight to our returning program, First Thursdays at the Marin County Law Library. My name is Denise Bashline, and I'm joined tonight by the Executive Director, Dana Van Gorder from the Spahr Center. I'd like to also welcome our law librarian, Lori Val-Olson, and a fellow board member, Chris Kirby, who were instrumental in helping us make the transition from a warm, cozy place in a law library to doing this via Zoom. Much appreciated. It's our maiden voyage, and we'll thank you for patience with us, and we hope that we continue with this and that you'll join us. One other nice thing that's happening is we've arranged to record this so it may be viewed later if you don't get a chance to watch it live with us. The idea behind First Thursdays in the Law Library comes from a lot of the practical experience that we have with the various programs, and that includes our lawyers in the library. Oftentimes we hear about needed referrals. How do people get to the agencies that can best help them? How can folks with little or no funding for legal services or other social services find their way to the right agency? The idea behind this program, once a month and now returning, is to introduce people in our community to the various agencies that very, very quietly and very, very strongly support all of us. And tonight we're really pleased to have Dana with us, who's going to tell us a little bit about the Spahr Center. And it's significant that we're returning in June for Pride, and also that the Board of Supervisors had on their agenda this week to honor them. So Dana, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for putting this together, and thanks for recording it so that it can be used for kind of multiple purposes moving forward. So I am the executive director of the Spahr Center. I started in this role as the interim executive director in March of 2019, and then became the permanent executive director last June. And it's been really a wonderful experience so far, and I look forward to the continued work, particularly, hopefully after we can kind of return to more normal operations when the COVID emergency is somewhat under control. And I'll talk a little bit about how the pandemic fits into our work in just a bit. I thought I'd talk a little bit about, first off, why the Spahr Center is here and what the need for it is. A little bit about our history, most importantly, a kind of discussion about what it is that we actually do, what our programs and services are. A discussion, as I mentioned, about how we've adjusted to COVID and how we view it and what programs and services we're offering around that. And then a discussion about how people can plug into our work and support us if they would like to do that. I encourage people to ask questions as I go, and I'm happy to, just take a breath to, to have a discussion if people would like. First off, why are we here? The Spahr Center is an agency that really formed 5 years ago out of Spectrum LGBT Center and the Marin AIDS Project. And so, we now have as part of our mission, supporting and empowering LGBTQ people in the county, as well as people living with and affected by HIV. Just to talk about the LGBTQ part of our work and why we do it, I think there's a sense in Marin County, which is generally pretty progressive, that LGBTQ people are doing perfectly well in the community, and probably not a lot of need for services. But in fact, we see among younger LGBTQ people and our seniors a continuing amount of sort of isolation and rejection, and in a number of different institutions throughout the county. We have young people who report that they still experience rejection and discrimination at home and in schools and in other settings. And so there is a need to, provide them with support to come out, feel good about themselves, and really thrive. And similarly with our seniors, we have seen that, in part due to experiences of discrimination and rejection for years, they often feel a continued need to sort of be in the closet. That means that they don't necessarily seek the services that they need, and in many cases experience some real suffering. And so we try to address their needs as well. We're all thrilled that same-sex marriage and other civil rights protections have been extended to LGBTQ people, particularly in California, but we haven't completely fulfilled our civil rights agenda. Even though the county and the state prohibit discrimination, we still at the federal level don't have basic protections against discrimination in jobs and employment and public services. And so continued advocacy is really very important. In terms of HIV, we're having an interesting conversation coming up actually about what was to sort of be learned from HIV that's relevant now in the COVID epidemic. But so it's interesting to talk about HIV in the current context. Everyone knows this is an epidemic that began in about 1981 with very severe impact on the LGBTQ community in particular, but also among heterosexuals and others. And the epidemic has taken a very significant toll, including in Marin County, where since the epidemic began, there have been about 800 deaths as a result of the disease. We currently have about 614 people who are living with HIV in the county, and almost no HIV-related deaths anymore. And we're reducing the number of new infections that are occurring. Last year, there were about 12 new infections as best we can tell. So making a lot of progress, but there is much work to be done. And the Spahr Center is at the center of that work in the county, along with, other medical providers. We're a non-medical provider, but medical providers including Kaiser and Marin Community Clinics and the county of Marin as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about how we actually approach HIV in a little bit. By way of history, I mentioned that we're the result of a merger just 5 years ago. We were founded by Jane Spahr and a small number of people, first as the Ministry of Light in about 1982. It was the first organization that really kind of came forward to work on issues that needed to be addressed in the LGBTQ community in Marin County, to have support groups and discussion groups and mental health services for people, to sort of raise the visibility of the community and advocate for it. And over time, the Ministry of Life had a couple of sort of reincarnations and renamings. And as I mentioned before, up until 5 years ago was called Spectrum. And then additionally, Jane and a small group of people started the Marin AIDS Support Network in 1984 at the beginning of the epidemic. It was clear that, in part because of our proximity to San Francisco, the HIV/AIDS epidemic was going to be significant here. There were people living here who were affected and people who were leaving San Francisco for a variety of different reasons, and they definitely needed a full array of services and advocacy to support them. So the Marin AIDS Support Network existed for a number of years before becoming the Marin AIDS Project. And then the two organizations merged, as I said, 5 years ago. That was primarily, if you look at smaller jurisdictions in California and throughout the state, it's not uncommon that HIV and LGBTQ issues sort of come together into one agency. It's often not easy to sustain two different organizations and even efficient to do that. And so there was really strength in bringing the two organizations together. And of course, there is certainly some, overlap, and the services that we provide are complementary between the communities of people who are affected by HIV and LGBTQ people. So we're happy to be celebrating our 5th anniversary. Right now, the merger really occurred in April, and we're doing really quite well at this point. And if the COVID emergency doesn't have a major impact on us, we look forward to a lot moving forward. So just to kind of talk about what our specific services are, I'll start with our youth program. We have a youth program coordinator who is responsible for a number of programs that include mental health therapy for youth. We operate a number of support and discussion groups. Some of them are based in high schools in the county. We currently operate about 4 of those that are just based in high schools. And we also provide some support to the gay-straight networks that exist in middle schools and high schools throughout the county. And then we have a set of 4 community-based discussion groups that meet on a regular basis, just for queer youth to gather and discuss a variety of issues and kind of organize themselves to conduct projects in the community. We have a really amazing youth advocacy coalition that formed a few years ago, primarily to help work on the school environment in Marin County. So as I mentioned, the school environment is not always as supportive as we would like it to be. And so the Youth Advocacy Coalition, along with our coordinator, developed a really amazing sort of allyship curriculum, which they have now presented to over 1,800 educators and school administrators in the county to, really sort of bring them up to speed on LGBTQ related issues, the experience of queer youth in the schools, and how to be effective allies to protect youth from any discrimination or harassment. And as a result of these trainings, we feel as though we're really helping to improve the culture in many schools. We're also working in a more in-depth way with a small number of schools where we go in and work with students and faculty and administrators to look at policies and procedures and really a much deeper dive in the culture to create sustainable change. And then the youth program also conducts just a set of social activities and dances and other gatherings for youth, just to bring them together. Our youth are quick to remind us that we shouldn't always pathologize them. Many of them are doing really extremely well, and what they really want is an opportunity to meet other queer youth in the county and just have recreation and fun. And so we increasingly try to provide those activities as well. Moving on to our senior program, as I mentioned, we really try, the focus of our senior program is on making sure that LGBT seniors aren't isolated at home by themselves, and that they have meaningful connection to others. And so right now our senior program consists primarily of a series of discussion groups that occur in 2 different places in the county on a regular basis, that bring together about 100 LGBT seniors to talk about a whole range of different issues about aging and community and what have you. We've found that it's a really great support for our seniors. There are a lot of people who report that this is the one thing that they really plug into on a monthly basis, and it has really helped them to sort of end their isolation and to feel much more connected to other people. So it's a great service. And then we, as we do with youth, we also have some great social activities from time to time. We have a dotted line to another great group of people called the Social Committee, a group of women who came together a few years ago to create a whole set of really fun social events for seniors, and they produce those on a regular basis. And we sort of, both of our newsletters let people know about what's happening in either agency so that we can plug in. But we're extremely grateful for their leadership in putting together events that enable people to get together as well. Our senior program is going to move increasingly into trying to do some work. We're working with a set of people who are pretty mobile, who are pretty able to actually attend events and what have you. But we're very concerned about a set of seniors who are living in assisted living and other facilities where they may not really be plugging in. Some of those may not be environments that are super supportive of LGBT seniors and where they don't feel as though they can really come out. And so I think post-COVID, we'll be working with the county to begin to do trainings in those facilities, as well as with other senior service providers to make sure that they understand the needs of LGBT seniors, and that they are serving as good allies as well, and helping us to reach out to LGBT seniors and plug them into our activities. So there's a lot more that we want to do in this area. Just to talk about HIV for a minute, the current state of the HIV epidemic is that we, honestly believe that we can end the epidemic in, potentially in the next decade. We're at a place in HIV now where the HIV medications that we have can keep people healthy for very long periods of time. A newly diagnosed person with HIV who starts taking current medications immediately can live nearly a normal lifespan, if they take them on a regular basis and if they achieve what's called viral suppression, where the drugs sort of drive the level of virus in one's blood and other parts of the body to the lowest possible levels. And so our work and there are two benefits of achieving viral suppression. One is that the HIV positive person, him or herself, will live much longer and be healthier. And the other is that they are extremely unlikely, if not completely unlikely, to transmit the virus to others. So helping HIV positive people to achieve viral suppression is a super high priority in ending the epidemic. And it's really the focus of what we do at the Spahr Center. As I mentioned, we don't provide clinical services, but we make sure that people are signed up for all of the benefits they need so that they have complete access to healthcare coverage and healthcare services and social services and food and nutrition and transportation and everything that they need to remain healthy. And we have case managers who are in constant contact with them to make sure that their needs are being met and that their health is good. And we're very highly successful in doing that. And then the other kind of pillar of ending the HIV epidemic, of course, is preventing new infections. And a real focus there right now on something called pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP. PrEP is, there is one HIV medication, and in the not too distant future, there might be two that can be used by HIV negative people to help them from acquiring HIV in the first place. So it's a daily medication that builds up enough antiretroviral activity in the system that if you meet HIV, it is neutralized. And so we have a program that we're currently in the process of expanding to make sure that as many people as we can who are at risk of HIV infection are taking PrEP. If you were to look at new infections of HIV in the county right now, and I mentioned that there, in 2018, there were about 19 new infections in 2018, and in 2019, about 12. So they're sort of getting lower and lower. But most of those infections, unfortunately, are occurring in the Latino community among younger Latino gay and bisexual men. And so we have a real focus on trying to make sure that that community in particular, but others are signing up for PrEP. We also are the only agency in Marin County right now that has a syringe exchange program. So one of the HIV prevention interventions that has really the strongest evidence base for stopping new infections is providing sterile syringes to injection drug users so that they don't acquire HIV or hepatitis C or a variety of other illnesses for that matter. And so we receive funding from a variety of different sources to distribute about 7,000 sterile syringes throughout the county in a kind of mobile program that we run to help in this area. And then we also work with injection drug users to make sure that they're accessing HIV care, hepatitis C healthcare if they need it, hepatitis C being completely curable now. And also that they're connected to substance use services if they would like to do that. And finally, in this area, we are one of the agencies in the county that is distributing naloxone. Naloxone is a drug that is used to reverse opioid-related overdoses. So we're all familiar with the emergency of heroin and opioid-related overdoses in the United States at this point, and addiction. And so the naloxone program is an effort to make sure that if people are using, they aren't overdosing. And we regularly get reports from people to whom we and others have distributed naloxone in the county that having naloxone on them or a friend who had it actually prevented them from overdosing and potentially dying. So that is really meaningful and impactful work. And then the final thing that we do and really have kind of ramped up in the last year is public policy and advocacy work. I come from a sort of public policy and lobbying background going back many years, and came to the agency and felt that it was really critical that we have more of a presence at the Civic Center with the Board of Supervisors and with our county agencies to make sure that they're aware of the needs of the LGBTQ and HIV communities and that they are helping to respond to them with funding and policies and other things. And so in the last year, we had a really wonderful advocacy day in January where we had about 50 people meet with all of the members of the Board of Supervisors for a discussion about our needs. We've been participating at a number of tables where priorities are being made for what kind of healthcare system we want to have in the county and what the health and mental health priorities are, and beginning to really see results in terms of the prioritization of the needs of our two populations in terms of the county's work and activities. So that's something that we're, that we really enjoy doing and that really makes a meaningful response. We've been involved, as I think I mentioned earlier, in a strategic planning process for the last few months, really taking a major step back to talk to a large number of people in the community about what they see as our needs and aspirations moving forward and what this agency should and its work should look like. One of the things that we hear so often is that Marin County kind of feels as though it's under a don't ask, don't tell policy. That we're the LGBTQ community is invisible. There's a fair amount of indifference. We aren't necessarily welcomed at a lot of tables and included in a lot of civic institutions, and there is a desire to really begin to chip away at that in meaningful ways. And so that is an important part of our work. Denise mentioned that the Board of Supervisors on Monday adopted a resolution declaring June as LGBTQ Pride Month, something that we greatly appreciate. And it sort of reaffirms their commitment to making sure that the county is welcoming and providing all of the services that they need. As part of that resolution, the board committed to flying the gay pride flag for the month of June over all of the county controlled buildings, and we're very excited about that. Last year was the first year that the flag flew over the Civic Center for the last week of June, but this year the Board of Supervisors sort of stepped it up and decided to fly the flag over multiple buildings in the county. And I know that that will mean a lot to our communities to drive around Marin and see the flag proudly flying as an indicator of the county's support for them. So look for that on the county fire stations and I think the libraries and Civic Center and the Veterans Memorial in a variety of different places. Some of them are up now, and I think some of them are going up relatively soon. So let me turn to COVID and what is happening there in terms of our response. I'm very happy to report that so far we have not had a client or group participant or constituent affected. We obviously are working with two groups that are at pretty high risk, our LGBT seniors and people with HIV. People with HIV who are virally suppressed are pretty unlikely to be at higher risk for COVID. But nevertheless, it's a group that needs to take particular precautions. And as I say, thus far, we have not had anybody report that they have acquired COVID, and that is really great news. And on Monday, I thanked the Board of Supervisors and the Health and Human Services folks who were at the board meeting for the thoughtfulness and thoroughness that they've put into the county's response. I think we all agree with that, I'm sure. And it has really helped to make sure that our clients are doing well. Like most other groups in the county, including the library, we are not holding any in-person events. We do provide an essential service because we provide health services. We have a food pantry and syringe exchange and a number of things that clients really do have to access in person. We have a very minimal presence in our office. There are two of us who are kind of rotating, but everything else has gone virtual. And the good news is that we've had great success, as other people have, in having people join our discussion groups and support groups and activities through Zoom. In all of our programs, we have staff who are checking in on a regular basis with all of our clients. So they're calling and emailing everyone that we work with to just see how they're doing, see what needs they might have, and to make sure that they are being filled. So far, it seems as though everybody is faring pretty well on all levels, which is really great. And I'm really appreciative of my staff and some key volunteers who are making sure that we're in touch with all of our folks. So let me move on to how to plug in. I hope that people find our work interesting and compelling and something that they might like to join in on. This is kind of a funny time for volunteerism, of course, because we don't have people working in the office. But as I mentioned, we do have volunteers who are shopping for folks, who are on the telephones calling people, who are running errands, including going to pharmacies and that kind of thing. So people who are, have wheels and would like to assist with that are more than welcome to contact us. And then moving forward, once our office is more operational, we do have a need for people who, come in and help us with administrative and clerical kinds of tasks. Um, and and we do produce events from time to time. We unfortunately had to cancel a really fun fundraising event that we had planned on May 30th. But we will have, events into the future. And as my grandmother used to say, many hands make light work. And so we love to have the extra hands. Um, I mentioned one of our advisory committees, but we welcome community members to participate in our 3 advisory committees. We have an HIV advisory committee that mostly consists of HIV positive people who are kind of helping us to watch over our programs and make sure that they are, really fulfilling the needs of our HIV positive clients. We have the Youth Advocacy Coalition, which I mentioned, that primarily consists of high school students at this point, but we do have some college students on it as well. It's a really wonderful group of youth who are doing incredibly remarkable work, and I think anybody would enjoy participating in that. And then we also have a senior advisory committee that plays a similar role, just overseeing our programs and providing me with advice about what more we ought to be doing and how we ought to do it. And that group is also very active. Many of the people right now who are connecting with our entire 200-person senior client list come from our senior advisory committee, and they're very committed to staying in touch with those folks. So those are 3 committees that would be where people would be welcome to join us as well. And then finally, of course, we have a board of directors that is also very active. We currently have 10 members on the board. The principal responsibilities of the board of directors, of course, are to help us to kind of scan the environment in the county and make sure that we are establishing the goals that we need to meet in order to assure the wellness of LGBTQ people and people with HIV in the county, and to make sure that we're well managed, particularly from a financial standpoint, so that we survive into the future. And we always welcome members of the board of directors to help us to raise money, of course. And this board of directors has been really stupendous about doing that. I'm really very grateful for their for what they do around fundraising activities. So that is a quick summary, and I hope I've touched some good bases, and am happy to fill in any gaps that I may have left.
In terms of the things that you talked about briefly of what your client base was telling you about needs, for instance, in terms of resources for the seniors that are aging in place, given the feelings that, folks may feel alone, isolated, are there folks that could benefit outside of your parameter to, say, working with legal aid with any of these issues? Or do you already have something like that set up?
We connect people to any services that they need. So as need arises, there are obviously other agencies that do a lot of things better than we can, and so we definitely provide referrals. But I think moving forward, in addition to some of the work that I described, we would hope to do more kind of case management with our seniors, so that we are doing a little bit more in-depth work to assess what needs they might have and make sure that they get filled, whether it's by us or by others. But whenever we identify a senior who, needs to access a service that we're not providing, we work with them to make sure that they get it.
At a time when housing has been an issue that we find many in need and few new places available, how
Right.
has that impacted the senior population of your clientele?
Right now, by and large, our senior population seems to be pretty stable in housing. We occasionally have a person who needs a referral for, some kind of supported housing or subsidized housing. But it's been fairly remarkable that it doesn't come up more often. It's something that we really look for, we keep our eyes peeled for and respond to. I think one of the things that we might learn from strategic planning, though, is that this is something that we need to kind of step up our game around as well. We have, as subsidized housing opportunities become available, I would sort of, you may know that Whistle Stop, is developing housing in downtown San Rafael right now. And so we were pretty active in making sure that our senior population knew about the opportunity to sign up for those units and worked with a few people to make sure that they got their applications in. I think this is increasingly something that we will need to do with our seniors, but it's something that we will, hope to grow into. I should mention HIV. Our HIV clients in particular have major housing needs, and we are able to, link them to subsidized housing in the county. We have an emergency financial assistance program as well, so if people get in trouble, we're able to help them with, deposits and monthly rental payments. So we're providing a fairly high level of support there. The COVID emergency has definitely increased the amount of support that we've needed to provide for housing, and so it's something that is an area where we're really particularly active in having to do a lot. And then finally, with regard to housing, I would say we somewhat regularly are contacted by queer youth who are having housing issues. They've been thrown out of their house or something, and this has been particularly true of transgender youth in the county. And so we also work with them to identify opportunities, whether it's in San Francisco or someplace else, either for temporary housing or for longer term housing. I suspect that in the future, we will also be trying to work with some housing providers to address that issue at a higher level as well, because it appears to be an increasing need.
Chris or Lori?
I have no further questions.
Well, I'm just wondering, this is Lori, I'm just wondering if there's some way that, we at the law library can, I don't know, I guess just by being aware of your organization, if ever folks come in who might need the services or might benefit from the services that you provide, do you have like a brochure, or, I mean, certainly we can refer them to your website.
Yes, and we also do have we do have brochures, and I'm happy to send some over. It would be great to have them there.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to have. It's always helpful to people to have something to look at,
Yes, it is. We haven't become a paperless society quite yet, that's for sure. Yeah, and we are contacted by folks from time to time, of course, who need some kind of legal assistance, and may hear from people who really just kind of need to do some legal research, and we're very happy to be able to send them over, and it's great to know who we can connect with as issues come up.
Yes, definitely. I'm hopefully we'll be able to get our lawyers in the library program back up soon also. I think it's going to have to be some sort of online platform or telephonic. But so far, since we have such a small law library in our intranet and even our phone systems are not super sophisticated, so I haven't quite yet got that set up, such that I can maintain the confidentiality of the phone numbers of both of the people that we would be connecting, the attorney as well as the patron who was receiving services.
Right.
So.
Well, we're beginning to think about a new office, so maybe we can move in together.
Real estate again.
I'm open to anything.
One other thing I would mention about sort of what we hear a lot from our folks is that they would really like to have a community center where a lot of different activities are going on. And the office that we currently have, which is in Corte Madera, doesn't quite have the look or feel or space of a community center. And so, bear in mind that, Marin County just doesn't have other gathering places for the LGBTQ community. So we would like to increasingly be able to accommodate more events and activities and things, and are looking for space. So let's buy a building together.
I'm sure my board would love to hear that proposal.
Yeah. They might have the money for it.
I wish. I guess I'm also wondering about, I'm sure your youth services, or I expect that the youth services maybe have some aspects that, is there an aspect that specifically speaks to youth that are feeling, I don't know, if that may even feel like suicidal or because they feel so rejected?
Yeah, we have a team of therapists who are seeing right now probably about 20 youth, and suicidality definitely comes up in that group, and I would say particularly with our transgender youth, and so we work very closely with people, not only in our own therapy, but we periodically provide referrals to other agencies for assistance. But it is, unfortunately, the suicide rate, particularly among transgender youth, is quite high. There are a remarkable number of transgender and non-binary youth in the county. Our youth advocacy coalition, interestingly, is predominantly made up of transgender youth. So it's a group that we work a lot with and provide a lot of support around. Oh, I should have mentioned that we also have a really wonderful support group for the parents of transgender and non-binary youth. We used to have two groups, and in COVID they've been combined into one Zoom meeting. But on a regular basis, we have about 25 or so parents who are coming together to kind of talk about what's happening with their transgender children. And we have a leader who has a transgender son who is really remarkable at working with parents. So it's a very significant focus of our youth-related work right now.
I have to say that I've heard that board member speak, and she does a great job promoting the Spahr Center, but also her story is very remarkable for her
Yeah,
child's story.
right. Is that Jana or
Yes,
Andrea?
yes.
Jana, yeah.
Jana.
Yeah, she's a force.
Mhm.
And of course, wrote a great book as well.
Yes, yes. In fact, she came to speak to my book club because we read her book.
Oh, great. Oh, how great.
It's wonderful to see that the organization participated with the group in Marin City. It sounds to me like your community outreach is pretty extraordinary. And looking at the history of the organization, a 36-year-old, project as the Marin AIDS Project, the old MAP project. Your organization has been a tremendous service to the community for a lot of years.
Indeed. Yeah, there are a lot of people who have benefited, and fortunately we still, have a lot of our HIV clients in particular have been working with us for a very long time. So it's great. I should mention in that regard that we're having a Pride virtual event on June 18th. We'll be honoring our founder, Janie Spahr. But we're also having a panel of people who are going to kind of talk about LGBTQ history in Marin County, going back as far as we can. And much of that history obviously will be about, the history of the Spahr Center and its predecessors. I looked hard to find people who, have been around since before the mid 70s and are having a hard time. So if anybody hears this and goes back to those earlier days, that it would be really wonderful to hear from them. We do a fair amount of community outreach. We, always feel as though we don't do quite as much as we can. And it was nice to have the march the other day was really wonderful. It was great to see so many people come out in Marin County. We are kind of acutely aware, and it's another issue that comes up in strategic planning for us. Our HIV clients are very diverse, as are people with HIV nationally. A significant number of African American and Latinx folks have HIV. In terms of our LGBTQ programs, not so much. We're fairly white, and definitely recognize the need for us to do better in that regard and to do more outreach, both to support other organizations and to make sure that LGBTQ folks are plugging into what we're doing. So that will be a major focus of our work in the next year and beyond. And hopefully many other institutions as well. I think a lot of people are really taking a step back to look at, what they're doing in this area.
That's great. I did see that Janie Spahr, I think, was going to be the marshal of the San Francisco Pride Parade until it was canceled.
She was the
That's
highest
too
vote
bad.
getter to be the Grand Marshal, which is both a reflection of her, of how fantastic she is, and that we ran a really great campaign. So yeah, she won't be able to go down the street on the back of a convertible at the parade at the end of June, which is now also virtual. So we thought we would create, some kind of an opportunity. I'm trying to figure out how on Zoom I could, put her on the back of a convertible with her hair blowing and kind of a fake little parade scene, but I don't have the technical ability to figure that out.
Yeah, that's too bad. That would have been a nice thing for her, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah, I would mention that Janie, in addition to all of the fantastic work that she has done here, is a is an ordained reverend and has done a huge amount of work around trying to make sure that organized religion is more welcoming of and ministering to LGBTQ people and people with HIV. And so in addition to being a really remarkable figure here, she's also been a remarkable national figure.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic person to have your organization named after.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
We hope for the opportunity to collaborate with you again in the future, and please let us know about upcoming events with your organization.
Shall do.
Yeah, we'd be happy to self-promote, I mean, not promote them through our website or our social media.
Great, excellent. I should make sure that you're getting our newsletter, which is called Sparkle, and you might be able to help push that out to folks as well.
Great.
Thanks to all, and happy Pride.
Thank you.
Thank
Stay
you.
cool and healthy and safe.
Okay.